I'm John Reuthe, president of your current president of WPA, no longer.
After the end of the meeting.
After the end of the meeting, one more minute. So let's talk quickly about the agenda. I'm welcoming you, which I'm doing now, and I'll make some comments a little bit later after Maine River's presentation on Weber Pond, the design and work being done around the dam, and then we'll go through into the minutes. Treasurer report. Unfortunately, Erika, I had a text from her last night, and she said, I have to go. She's from Canada, she's from Edmonton area, and so she said, I have to go home. So I suspect there's been an illness in the family. So she sent me a text last night and said, I won't be there. So I don't have a treasurer report. The CRLA membership, which I'll talk about, water quality and water level work, which Susan has, if any of you follow any of the data, a huge amount of data coming out, Susan's going to try to interpret it. And then Mary Schwanke and others will talk about the grants which have been given in our name. We don't get the money directly, but in our name to help do the work around the pond, around water quality. And then we'll have an election of the board of directors and officers and any other issues that come up, and then we'll get on here. So in the back is Laura Jones, who's actually filming this, so in case anybody wants to look at it later, Laura has been doing this with town. She's part of the Fieldstone group, if anybody goes up there and sees that gorgeous place, but Laura's retired Air Force. Yeah. She had more wings than I had. So anyway, and with that, I'm going to introduce Landis Hudson and Matt Streeter, and they can talk about the dam and what's going on. So let's see what I'm.
Hi all, I'm Landis. I'm here for Maine Rivers and want to give you a huge thank you for all the work that you do for this place that you love. I know you've got an awful lot on your agenda. There are a lot of challenges that you guys are trying to face. I hope we all are heading into a beautiful summer with lots of recreation and making the kind of memories that we want for ourselves and our families. Matt and I are here to talk a little bit about the work we've been involved in over now a couple of seasons with plans to upgrade the fishway so that it's got better management and control for some of the work that you guys want to be able to do and is more efficient for the fish. So Matt's going to walk through some of the logistics, and I can tell you we are finalizing plans for the funding. Fishways are always astonishingly expensive, getting all the technical details in place. It's an exciting project to be able to work on. It's kind of a rare thing in the world to be able to bring back some ecological health, and alewives are the base of the food chain. They're considered a keystone species. They're not necessarily good eating for me, but for lots of birds and other fish and creatures from all the way from Weber Pond out to the ocean. So it's important work that has a lot of value to it for many different communities, the human and wildlife. So we're grateful to have been able to have the conversations that we've had over the past few years, and look forward to finalizing plans that we've been working on to make sure they balance and make some of the dam operations easier in the long run, because you guys are obviously working through a lot of the management questions. So with that, Matt's going to talk through some of the logistics.
All right. I'll get this up front here so people can see it as best they can. It's still a little small for you probably. But we've been, last year when we were here, we kind of presented 4 different options as far as what kinds of fishways might be useful here. And since then, working with the town and with members of this organization, we've kind of narrowed it down to what's called a Daniil style fishway. It is very similar to, the type of fishway is what we've got over at the China Lake outlet. So here's a picture of that site. It wouldn't look exactly like this, but this is roughly the way it looks on the ground. As Landon said, we've got a good line on the funding. I think I suggested to some people that we had the funding locked in. It's not quite locked in, but we've got a good line on where we're going to get the funding for the project, which is a nice place to be at this point in the project. The funding for, by the way, the White House Road project, that culvert over White House Road that's going to let the alewives up into 3 Mile Pond, is locked in. And those funds are coming from the Federal Highway Administration and from Maine DOT. So that's locked in. And so we don't anticipate a problem getting that through. It's pretty much a done deal. Let's see. Timing on construction, the earliest we would start is summer of 2025. If we did it in 2025, we'd be talking about between July 15th and September 30th. Based on my experience, these can vary a great deal, but construction will probably take a month to a month and a half on the Fishway. And we're also talking about replacing the gates at the dam in order to make them easier and safer and more manageable than they currently are. I think some of you who operate those gates know that it can be a challenge. So what we want to replace those with are, instead of being the stop logs that you have to take out 6 inches or a foot at a time and can be really tough to manage, we want to install gates that can be cranked up. We'll have some kind of electronic mechanism to crank them up and down. And the way that they'll operate is they're pretty neat. It's exactly what we've got over here at China Lake. But as you crank on them, the first couple of feet, it'll crank down. Okay? So you crank, go down about 2 feet, and the water will start spilling over the top. And that's like 1 feet. Keep cranking, and it'll go down another 2 feet or so, depending on, I don't know exactly the height of this dam and stuff, but you go down another 2 feet, and then when it gets to the bottom, now it's a 3-leaf opening, so it goes down, and then the bottom leaf is about 2 feet tall, and so that's got no place to go but up. So if you really want to get to that bottom 2 feet of management, you got to crank up, and the water will just flow out through the chute. And that's on this side. We're going to have that kind of gate on one side. The other side, I think what we'll have is just a gate that cranks straight up from the bottom. Okay? And the reason there's a difference is because the alewives will be much healthier going out of the lake if they can go out on the surface than on the bottom. So if any of you have ever seen how a bottom opening gate works, you open it up by 6 inches and you've got like a vortex down there, and the fish would get just torn to pieces going through there. Used to be the way they were going out of China Lake, and it was really bad. You could see them coming out from under that dam, like battered and beaten and stunned. Probably a good many of them died on their way down to the ocean. So to get them quickly and effectively and safely out of the lake, as soon as they're ready to go, which is typically after they finish spawning, and then the juveniles later in the fall, which are even smaller and more fragile, we really want them going out on the surface over the gate rather than getting sucked through the bottom. So this one will be one that opens from the top, and this one will be one that opens from the bottom, and that just gives you maximum volume, with minimal hassle. But when the migration's going on, most of the fish will be attracted to that opening that will be going out that way. Now, the way this will be installed, your existing stop log slots will just stay in place. We'll install the gates somewhere downstream of them in this area, so that if we ever need to, we can always put those stop logs back in if we need to work on the gates or whatever. There's no reason to get rid of them. They're there, we've got them.
Can I ask you a question real quick while I think about it? Do we know exactly when that migration is over and when they would let them out of the pond and how long they would have to leave that gate open? Because if you open it up in the middle of the summer to let the alewife out, you're going to be lowering the pond.
Yeah. We don't have exact numbers because it varies from year to year, but typically the upstream migration, which will be through here exclusively, takes place from sometime beginning middle of May through middle of June. And then by the middle of June, pretty much all the fish that are coming up from the ocean have gotten through, and we can shut that gate and then start opening this gate. And you open it from the top, like if we open it from the top 6 inches, it's not going to be draining the lake. It'll be, I don't know what you guys usually, there's usually at least 6, at a bare minimum, you've got 6 inches that you have to remove because that's how big the stop logs are. So what we probably do is, you start out by opening that by 6 inches and see if it's enough, and then at that point, you're essentially gauging how much water you want to let out of the lake. And you can open it by 6 inches, 7 inches, 5 inches. You got complete control now rather than having to take out a whole board.
I think for the alewife purposes, having one gate go down from the top is okay. But from our purposes, for draining,
Yeah.
for flushing the lake, we would want both to go down from the top. And then we could pull them all the way up if we needed to.
You'd
correct?
rather have them both top open.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
I agree too.
Because what we get is, we get, scum and high phosphorus levels at the top. So we really want to be getting as much water off the top. And by the middle of September, don't forget, by the middle of September, we're draining the lake, flushing the lake anyway. So if there are any baby alewives still coming in, then we've got a lot of water going out for them. And that's not,
Yeah. Yeah, certainly and it depends, it's different from lake to lake, but certainly at China Lake by mid-September, the alewives are still coming, the juveniles are still coming out.
yeah. But we, at that point, we're opening the gates fairly high anyway,
Yeah.
fairly far down. We're flushing
Yeah.
the lake.
All
Or
right.
just recommendation.
Yeah, so that's good to know. Also, as part of that, what we'll do is we're going to add a little barrier down here at the very end of this chute, so that when water comes over that, it fills up a little, maybe 2-foot tall pool there that the alewives will fall into rather than just falling on concrete.
So it looks like the zigzag is increasing the length of the fish ladder. Is that to reduce the angle that they have to go up at a time?
Exactly, yeah. So this is wider and it's got a shallower slope. And it's slightly different, the baffles, you're all familiar with the baffles that go in there. They're a little bit spaced out more and they're made out of wood, but largely it's the same principle as what you got there. It's just wider and a shallower slope to make the trip into the lake a little easier for the fish.
And is that going to go into where the pond is?
Where this goes over here, we're going to stay within the current row of boulders that are there. And exactly where this falls is still up to discussion. So just having a conversation with Brandon, is it?
Yeah.
Just having a conversation with Brandon about how to best configure it so that his work is as efficient as possible.
They're still gonna have a catch in there to catch them, like they have a catch.
Yeah, we'll probably have the same setup that they've got now. I mean, we'll have to discuss that. There might be a better way to do it, but most likely we'll end up having the exact same setup. All right.
So, so the gates that we're going to put in, the new ones, that's going to be able to open up to the same amount of, what the mouth of the dam is now, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
going to be restricting what the current
Yeah,
thing is, right?
it won't be restricted.
And so there's only like a 6-7 foot elevation change from the front stream to the front of the lake.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to get them to go up, change that grade when you got branch pond that's a 30-foot elevation change that almost has the same exact fish ladder that we currently have now in
Yeah.
that pond? I'm just
Yeah, yeah. Well, because the part that I mentioned earlier about the White House Road culvert, When fish have free reign to get up into 3 Mile Pond, we expect the number of fish coming through to double. And the one that we've got there is already, you'll notice the fish back up way down here. Like, that's not optimum. So,
Because they're swimming up into the dam, trying to find their way to get around and go.
well,
You know?
the thing that's stopping that is, the constraint is that fishway. It's narrower, it's shallower, and it's steeper. So all of those
They
factors.
just built last year at branches like the same as what this one is.
Yeah, but they probably don't have the same number of fish.
Is that,
It's a question of how many fish you're
How
trying to
many
get
fish.
through it. Yeah, that's exactly.
wouldn't it make it pretty good if you put like right off the mouth of that, went across and had something so the fish can swim past that? But the
Here?
egress of the fish coming
You
in.
know,
would be
we
so-
talked about that, and we've talked about it with, some of the funders, NOAA, the Department of Agriculture, and the people who do this all the time. It's not that much of a distance here. The problem that you got here isn't so much that the fish are getting past it and getting lost. Some of them will do that, but if this is, maybe 12 or 15 feet, the fish will cycle back around and find their way in there. The things that affect their ability to get in here are how well you direct this jet. I was just telling someone, if you direct that jet, then you can get that jet to go all the way across the full width of the stream, the jet of water coming out of here. Then as soon as they hit that jet, most of them will follow that right up. And at the China Lake outlet stream, we've got 3 fishways over there. And in each case, we've got that jet. You can sit there and watch the jet go all the way across the stream. It's incredibly effective. In each of those cases, the openings are between 6 and 15 or 20 feet from the dam, and they're very effective. A few will get up here, but they'll come back around. The big reason that you get that big backlog going all the way down is just the sheer capacity of the existing fishway.
But China Lake and those, they use the flow of the stream and the fish ladder all as one. So we use the egress of the fish through the dam.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have this bigger fish ladder open. We're gonna use quite a bit more of a volume of water out of the lake, right?
Well, no, because when the fishway is operating, you could very well just shut this completely.
So the fish that are, the runbacks are gonna come down the fish ladder and egress from there?
Well, in that time period, when the fish are swimming up the fish ladder, very few of them are trying to come down.
Okay, because I've been told that we're keeping, that water, well, I guess it's to keep the pool fill, the pool in there full.
The pool down here, yeah, I mean, this will stay full, but there won't be an entrapment flow going through there. Now, if the water's really high, you open this up and you let it out. But because this is going to flow typically between 20 and 40 CFS, cubic feet per second. And if you get a big rain, that's not going to be enough to get your lake level down to where you want it for the summer. If it's a dry spring, that will be plenty. So all together with these 3 gates, you're going to have a whole bunch more control over how much flows out. But what you ideally want is a good, strong jet of flow going through here to attract the fish up the fishway. But even with, like at China Lake, if there's a lot of water in the lake, we're letting a bunch of water out of these gates. And they still manage to find that as long as it's a pretty strong flow.
It seems like they really get beat up quite a bit when they keep swimming up and around and back to try to find the fish.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, but if there's a better flow coming out of here,
Oh,
and the fish also follow the fish in front of them by smell and by sight. So if there's a more steady flow of fish going up there, they're going to spend less time in here getting beat up than they do now. Yeah.
I have 2 questions, actually. First, during the construction period,
Yeah.
what sort of an impact is the construction itself going to have on the water level of the lake?
We're not going to affect your management of the water level at all.
So
Here's why. Because what we're going to do at the beginning is we'll probably direct all the flow over the existing gates, just like you do now. Exactly the same thing as you do now. Building this part is by far the most time-consuming part of the project. It's probably a month and a half's worth of work. During that time, all the water is going to be flowing over here exactly like it does now. When we're done with that, by that time, it'll probably be August, right? When you're not letting a ton of water out of the lake anyway, unless you're doing a flush or something. And at that time, we'll want to start working here. We'll shut these off and we'll open this up. Now, during normal operation, this will flow 20 to 40 CFS. But if you take out the top couple of baffles, this thing will flow 50 to 100 CFS. I don't know exactly what, but it'll flow as much as you need. And if it doesn't, we'll have the contractor on notice that they have to have pumps available to pump water if we need to keep to manage the flow the way that we want to.
Off the surface.
Yeah. That's the key.
So you're telling us that the construction itself will not adversely affect the water?
No, okay.
Now, my second question, you said the gates are operated electronically?
Yeah, that's a little more
Okay.
than what I meant to say.
Let me just finish my question.
Yeah.
If they're operated electronically, since that's not really our fish ladder, I assume WPA will not be paying the electrical bill?
Well, the way they'll be operated is with a battery-powered drill. Like, you ever seen not really a drill, you ever seen those big Milwaukee mixers that you use to mix paint and stuff? One of those will operate it. So you won't have to have an electrical circuit going to here or anything like that. You just have to charge this battery. It's not going to be a ton of electricity.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a separate like meter or anything like that.
This may be a Landis question. I know that touched upon that the alewives are a keystone species. I understand the word keystone, right? And you just touched on it, but I was wondering if you could say, what is the benefit for Weber Pond to have the alewives come in and out as opposed to just bypassing them altogether?
Don't answer that.
Oh, sure, but you know what, even better than me, we have a, even better than me, we have, who could probably,
Does that mean we have to be nice to him?
So the benefit is multifold of having the alewives be back in the system that they historically were in for a long, long time. Landis touched on it, the keystone species aspect of it. Can't say enough about that. All the different bits of the ecosystem the alewives interplay with, from terrestrial organisms to aquatic organisms and the stuff that they feed, everything in between. We've all seen, the increase in bald eagles around Weber Pond. Yes, they were always there, but now there's a lot more of them. Same thing with the ospreys. Just about everything in the springtime that lives around here, minus strictly the herbivores, will take part in that feast that shows up. In the Weber Pond, just strictly the aquatic environment, the juveniles feed a lot of other fish that live in the pond. It cascades both up the food chain and down the food chain. The amount of stuff that they interact with. In fact, as you build one of these food chain models, it gets extraordinarily complex very, very quickly. The nature of the keystone species thing is truly remarkable in that they impact just about everything around and tie a lot of that ecosystem together. In their absence, you'll see a lot fewer of just about everything that will partake in that annual spring run of fish. And then once the adults are done spawning, they'll start running back downstream, all the while, feeding those bald eagles, feeding those great blue herons. Loons in the pond feeds those, and then the juveniles start to grow up, and everything starts eating on those. Everything from dragonfly nymphs to you name it. It's just about everything will feed on. And they're also a good transporter of other species, such as, well, in one in particular, the freshwater mussels will travel around on the gills of the adults and then drop off onto new territory. Typically, if you've ever watched, the mussel races on the bottom of the pond, It takes them a long time to get anywhere. So this is a, this is a way for them to get transported around the water system. Just that interconnectivity between freshwater mussels and alewives is remarkable in its own right. If you sit down and you really look at the interactions that occur in alewife land to everything else that exists in the system, it's truly broad and astonishing, actually, the number of species they impact.
And a little less scientifically, a couple of years ago when I was overseeing the construction of the fishway over in China Lake, every morning I'd show up around 6:30 and meet with the supervisor and the construction crew and talk through what was going to happen for the day. And it was always, every morning there was this little parade of animals coming in. It would start out with drawing a blank on the bird. So if it's a water bird, it looks like a loon, but it's not a loon.
Yeah, cormorant.
Cormorant, yeah. So every morning, the juvenile alewives were kind of circulating around there later in the summer. The cormorant would come in and just have his full, you know, feeding away. Then a bunch of ducks came in. I don't know anything about ducks. I didn't know ducks, some species of ducks actually eat fish. So this family of ducks, this mother duck and a bunch of little baby ducks would come around. And boy, they loved sucking down those alewives. And then, of course, the whole time you look through the water and there are big, fat, lazy-looking bass cruising around, eating the fish. And the last thing that would come in, there was a guy on a bass boat with his son. They'd come in every single morning casting for bass. So like, it was just a little kind of microcosm of what goes on. And that's a tiny fraction of the way that alewives can impact the ecosystem.
The other angle to it is that there is a harvest which benefits the harvester and provides revenue to the town. We're not at the point yet where the alewife run that's been established going into China Lake can be harvested for the town. But, you know, stay tuned when the scientists sign off and determine that that run is sustainable. That will be a remarkable benefit to the town. So it's very unusual in the world to be able to provide, you know, rebuilding a natural system and at the same time creating revenue for a town.
Along that line, right now, Weber, so the funding it provides, who's gotten us the equipment and also and some other things around the dam actually come from the alewife fund, from our own harvest. So, and it's small compared to what will be created up in the China Lake one, but it's very important. I have another question for Nate. So we know that alewife is part of the Greater Atlantic thing. So there's the Atlantic Fisheries Commission. So they are actually the ultimate overseer of the alewives. Is that correct? So that's really who. Nothing happens unless they approve. Right? You start fishing and all this sort of stuff, and that's an Atlantic States Commission. So that's a pretty good size operation. So we're not invisible. We're not just a little Weber pond. We've got a lot of visibility U.S.-wide, and our governance comes from that. So, you know, we think we may have control. Dave.
Let me just say one more thing about the income. Over the past 5 or 6 years, the income has been like $22,000 a year. Last year was $30,000, but that's because we had so much rain and flooding and stuff that the water flow was really crazy. So there was like $33,000 of income last year. And so it's, you know, it is a significant number. And when China opened, you know, when China revenues start being generated, it will be much bigger number.
We've been having some issues of dead fish. My question to you is, they're putting more and more alewives coming in. Is that taking the food chain from the existing fish that are in the pond? Because I'm seeing, you know, floating, you know, and they're not that big. So
Well, Nate could probably answer better, but my instinct on that is the alewives eat phytoplankton and zooplankton, and they grow up into bite-sized chunks for the bass. So if anything, it's converting the
what about
nutrients
the
in the
perch
pond.
and all that stuff? I mean, I've
Well,
seen
yes.
perch almost be extinct.
Yeah,
Carol, can I answer this?
Wait.
Because we talked to DEP, Linda Bacon at DEP about this, and IFW as well, Jason Siders at IFW. And this is probably because we had that significantly high level of phosphorus this year in
Yeah, but this,
April.
I'm going back
No,
many years.
No, I'm talking about in April.
Mhm.
And so if we had very, and that was, and Linda says she thinks that was due to very low oxygen levels at the bottom of the lake. Very low oxygen levels cause stress on fish.
Is that because of so many alewives now?
No, that's
They
just
need
because of, this is
oxygen.
because of our water quality issues.
I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but it seems to be the fish die-off is happening when there's no alewives in the lake.
Right, my understanding is that tends to happen over the winter, and then
It's
they're
mostly
lying on the
in the
surface
spring.
in the spring and ice
There's
out,
no-
yeah, which would be
there's no
the time
alewives
when there's
there.
really no alewives around.
We had dead fish 3 weeks ago.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
And it's never been any alewives. Why is it just the fish that are existing in the pond?
Jason would say it's because our lake is very, since invasive crappie were introduced into the 3 Mile Pond and came down to Weber, we have had a significant increase in the density of fish in the lake year-round.
So like one of the big selling points for the alewives was they were supposed to, you know, help with water quality and stuff like that. I'm just curious, because I can't really find, like, what is the number, how much phosphorus do you think they take out? Like how, so say if you have 20 dead alewives and 20 dead yellow perch or something like that, how many of the fry and how many of the other fish does it take to remove the phosphorus of their dying bodies, rotting and doing stuff? Like, do we have some type of a number or anything?
Yeah, we have a dry phosphorus or a wet phosphorus content number for both adults and juveniles. And what we find with the math is overall, provided we have good out-migration of post-spawn adults, there's a phosphorus sink on the juvenile end of things as they come out in mass.
Yep.
And it's a numbers game. So there's a lot more juveniles, which are much, much smaller than the adults. And yes, we do lose some of the pond, there's no question. Depending on existing conditions in the pond, i.e. water quality, water temperature, you lose some adults in the pond. That's an addition of phosphorus to the pond. But understand, it's not quite so simple as like taking a teaspoon of phosphorus and flicking it in the pond. A lot of the times, the dead alewives are scavenged. Sometimes they're not, sometimes they do dissolve in the pond, but all the math points to the sink at the end of the season, the out-migration of the juveniles. You lose more phosphorus than you gain. And you couple that with the water quality drawdown, which is, so many units of phosphorus per volume of water. The long story is really, you're losing it, but there's such a legacy load, historical load in the pond, it takes a while. You're basically, going back to the teaspoon analogy, you're attacking the giant salt pile with a teaspoon, 1 teaspoon at a time. It's a time thing. We tend to look at things on the human time scale. Well, Weber Pond took about 350 years, very short order after post-colonization, to basically get it to the point where it starts going over the edge and then it starts blooming. And you have all that legacy load of phosphorus, that even if we just look at 200 years, if you had to walk in 200 years worth of phosphorus, you're going to have to walk out quite a bit to get to the point where it stops continuously blooming in the height of summer when that phosphorus becomes available, the light's long. So it is a phosphorus sink, and if you want, I can give you the dry and wet weight number.
I'd just like to have an idea of like how this is. And the other thing is I know this whole fish program, it ain't gonna go anywhere. Like it's gonna be here, we're gonna put it through and stuff like that. And and a lot of people, I know a lot of people on this site, I'm kind of speaking for them, and these are things that are gonna be brought up. So the big thing is like, we have these water quality issues, a bunch of different stuff that's going on. and we're gonna go and open up and pound up a bunch of fish up in the 3 Mile, where there's always a percentage rate after spawning that they're gonna die.
Yep.
And like in Weber, we take them and we can flush them down the river quick, and they're not so much dying in Weber now, but if we send them all up the 3 Mile, we're probably gonna get the majority of the fish kill in Weber before they get out to the other side of the lake. And that's gonna be a lot more like nutrients put in there. And it's just, this is stuff that's been brought up and talked about throughout neighbors and people around the lake and stuff, and I just want to hear what you guys have for a take on that.
Well, there's no getting around the fact that that north branch of the 7 Mile system is basically one thing. You know, 3 Corner, 3 Mile, Weber Pond, whatever happens,
No,
yeah.
We're right there.
Yeah, whatever happens, you catch.
so I'm just nervous that we're just gonna pull more up there, and then we're just gonna be the catch basin again, you know?
Well, you know, yeah, you're gonna be.
So,
You're the tail end Charlie on that north branch, so whatever happens in 3 Mile, whether it's tailwise or not,
yeah, anything.
you guys catch it. You guys catch the latent load that's already in 3 Mile now, tailwise or no. It's no small load.
No.
It's one of them. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, you remember the history of, they did a alum treatment in 3 Mile in 87?
Yeah, they started like in 97.
Yeah.
maybe, so like
87. Yeah.
And
Didn't really take.
Yeah.
but they also didn't know how to do them properly,
Yeah.
like they do now, so it
Yeah.
does make a difference. And we are exploring the whole business of alum treatment, but it takes work, and rarely we get into that. It's a significant amount of scientific studies that have to be done, and water and pH and all this kind of stuff. A lot of numbers have to be met in order for it to do it. None of us can afford to do it on our own. So it's got to be done with help from, more likely from federal government to do it. So that's the way, that's what it's going to take. But in order to get that money, we have to do a lot of studies up front, which we're doing now. We'll get into that. I want to move on. Did anyone have any more questions for Landis or Matt?
You know, I can stay afterwards.
Okay.
I realized that I was going to have an obligation this afternoon, but I don't anymore. So I can stay afterwards and answer one-on-one questions so that you guys can bring on.
Yeah, that's great. Because we know that there are people that have a lot of questions, and like Dick said, you know, there's people around the lake and there are different camps that feel about it. We have this now. You know, so the question is, how do we manage it the best way? And how we manage our water quality? And that's what we're going to get into. But
Sounds like a good plan.
all right.
Thank you.
So I'm going to try to push through this a little bit faster so we can get down to more conversation about water quality, which is really what you care about more than anything else. So, Becky, you want to give us some minutes for the 2023 number?
The minutes for last year's meeting have been posted on Facebook for several months now. The Board of Directors reviewed those minutes and edited and made a motion to accept those minutes. So they've been out there, that's where they are on Facebook. So if you really like to refresh your memory and look at that, then go ahead and look on Facebook. But I'd just like a motion to approve the minutes that have been posted that the Board of Directors have reviewed.
My
Have a
motion.
motion? Thank you. Matt?
The second?
Second. Sammy? All in favor of accepting the minutes?
Thank you.
I'm on the treasurer's report.
Okay.
Yeah, as John said earlier, Erika Bennet, our treasurer, was called away, and so the treasurer's report is not available today. We've collected your dues, we have your information. We'll update that later on. We'll see, we are recommending Jennifer McComb to be the new treasurer, so she'll be moving that forward. We'll ask Erika to post the treasurer's report on her Facebook page when she returns from her.
Can I say something here? If anybody doesn't use Facebook and wants to be emailed, let me know your email address, because I also send out emails to like 117 people.
I gave her email.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that, you know, people who don't want that get that.
Okay. So you can't vote on the treasurer's report because we don't have it, but we'll do that next year, I guess.
Brief thing, I'm going to discuss a little bit with the CRLA, which is the China Region Lake Alliance, of which we are a member. There are three, it is made up of a consortium of people, of organizations, China Lake Association, the 3 Mile Pond Association, and Weber Pond, and the Kennebec Water District. That's it. That's what makes up
And
the
the two
city.
towns.
And the two
Three
towns.
towns, actually.
Yeah, China, Bassboro, and Windsor. Advise that. There had been a lot of questions about, well, is the CRLA worth it, that kind of stuff. It is a 501c3, which we are not, neither is 3 Mile Pond. So Becky and I actually, quite honestly, had questions, significant questions about it, and so did some people within, well, in China, all around, every members. We started a year ago working, and the executive director, Scott Pierce, resigned and is gone, and then we had a question about what do we do? There is a lot of money in the bank there that has been collected through TIFs, a variety of ways that the money was accumulated to the point that we just couldn't say, oh, let's leave, because we would leave a lot of money on the table. I mean, I'm talking over $100,000. So we said, oh, we're not going to do that. It is a membership organization. So if we're going to be members, it's $1,500 a year. That's what it costs to do it. And that is the same whether you're in China Lake or whether you're in or 3 Mile Pond or wherever. That's what our dues are. So it's a dues organization that we need to do continued contributing to if we're going to be members of it. Frankly, one of the things that happened, we actually got a small grant already that we had to use China. We had to use the CRLA in order to get that money. So it is our conduit for funding in some cases.
Also, it is our hub for the Lake Smart services that we provide. Jennifer is our major contact with Lake Smart, and that flows through CRLA. They have the hub, so they can work with Maine Lakes. It makes it a whole lot easier than for Weber to go to Maine Lakes directly. So there's just economies of scale belonging to CRLA under its new leadership. So the board of directors of the Weber Pond Association can send a member to the CRLA board, and I encourage you to do that, and be active and make sure you influence the policies that are being developed there. So I would move that the WPA approve becoming or remaining members of the CRLA and paying the $1,500 membership dues.
Do I have a second?
I got a
Question?
Does seem that most of that money goes to China Lake?
Nope.
When they do it? No?
Nope.
It's
Nope.
throughout everybody?
Nope.
Equally type of thing, or?
It does go through everybody, and there is actually a new accounting procedure that we will be able to identify where the monies go. In the past, it's
Yeah.
been difficult to understand the flow of monies, but now under the new executive director, we have said we need to see an accounting. Now, some years, we may be slightly short of that, because the town of Bassboro is putting in $10,000 as well. It's not just the $1,500 from WPA. So there's significant money from Bassboro to fund Bassboro projects. But with the things we have going on now with the grants,
Off the top of your head, before like what we have going on here, what was like the last project that they did with that?
the biggest project is the courtesy boat inspector. And so we fund at least the minimum that is needed. There is more that is needed than Bassboro funds for our 3 Mile Pond in Bassboro and River Pond boat inspectors.
There have actually been discussion about us doing our own CBI. Problem is, the town of Bassboro actually has three launch sites that it's responsible for. There's hours. There's 3 Mile Pond, there's also China Lake.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, gee, we have to run a whole payroll system, we gotta do all this stuff. So we hired Jessie McDougal, and she's doing a great job. And so that's probably one of the biggest things we get the benefit, significant benefit from, to keep up to the
Does
basics.
Mount Lawn have an association like we do?
3 Mile?
They do?
Oh, yeah, and
Okay.
they'll get into it, and they have never been active, and now they're going crazy.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because I
Oh, yeah.
know in the past they were like, okay, you guys do everything and we're gonna benefit from it.
No,
And now it's like,
yeah,
okay, that's all I wanted.
yeah, no,
Can I also say, I think part of the issue was that we stopped asking for things because we thought that the water quality was good because the OIs. And so we didn't ask for things. I know a couple of projects were done a few years ago on the North Shore with riprap and things like that. And I think we just need to be more proactive at asking for what we need. And Jessie May seems to be very interested in making sure that, you know, we get things that we need and that, you know, the process works out. Where they already have some commitments in place, but I think she's very interested in making sure that the equity, and everyone understands the water issues that we're facing in 3 Mile Ponds.
the Kennebec Water District had almost become inactive with the group, and now they're back strongly supporting. And so it's Becky and I, and both of us are members of the CRLA board, although somebody else is going to be doing it. Smile. It is very important that we can, to me, it's very important because actually Becky and I were very big doubters about that until we really looked at, oh, we got the whole CBI thing, program, and these other things that we need to continue operating on. The CBI program is expensive because you're employing, I don't know how many people now are
25.
and that are scattered around, so you've got that, you've got all the other stuff that goes with payroll, you know, with that. So it's a major administrative piece. Yeah.
The question I have, you mentioned the accounting out, the funds that are given to whoever you'll be able to trace. It's one thing to give that information to the board and the officers, but will it be disseminated to the membership as well? The information.
I don't know, that's not our call. We could bring that up.
I mean, we're on the
But
board.
Let me just say that a few years ago, they did give us information, we posted it on Facebook.
I have to tell you, what started this whole thing was, in sitting, Becky called the current executive director at that time and made, and kept asking questions about, there was no tracking of where that money, what was responsible for that money. And it turns out the town of Asheboro, the town of China, and Windsor all wanted to know where the money was to, what the story was. So we're still doing an audit and rebuilding that books right now.
But I also think that, you know, sorry, I just jumped in. What my understanding is that you ask them for projects. You say, here's what I want to do. I need some money for it. They don't just give Weber money. They don't just give people money.
They run three projects.
Yeah.
They run courtesy boat inspectors,
Yeah.
they run Lake Smart, and they run conservation easement.
So what you need then is you need to have projects that you want help with. And,
Did you get a proposal together?
yeah, exactly.
Under those three things,
Yes.
those three general categories.
And we did have some projects that were outstanding on Lake Smart that we're following up on now. So, you know, that's just, if people want to go ahead with the projects.
Are the kids still doing the riprap projects and stuff like that?
That's the youth
They are.
conservation board. And again, that's,
When,
the board prioritized, of the three projects, the board prioritized courtesy boat inspectors, because that starts now. Lake Smart, because that should never stop, and it's back into full service now. And then the third is the youth conservation board. And that's a little trickier because you have to hire the youth, you have to get the projects, you have to do all of that. So they plan to do that. It's not.
but it has been doing it for years, like years now, I don't think. I haven't been
Not on Weber.
Not on Weber.
There were youth conservation board doing these river projects. In fact, my husband and I ran into someone who ran the project done at one of our friends' houses. And,
On Weber, in the last.
On
few
Weber,
years.
yeah.
Few years.
Yeah, a few years ago.
I just wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Well, it was on the north end.
Yeah.
But my concern is $1,500 CRLA. That's 60 of our membership dues. But yet, we are not allowed to know how much of our
I'm
money
not
is
saying
used.
that, Al. I'm not saying you're not allowed to know. All I'm saying is I can't tell you that because I'm not CRLA. I'm on the board, I was on the board. I can have the next representative take that concern to the board, that's fine. I just can't say yes because that's
No,
not
I
my
mean, you
call.
said that they are accounting to you where the $1,500
We-
goes.
Yes,
To
and
the- Okay, so why don't we know where the $1,500
Because I don't think they know where it is right now.
right now
We
we
don't
don't
even have
know.
a treasurer over there right now, which
Yeah.
is maybe.
It is a building organization, and so hopefully, all of those things that we're moving in that direction will come to fruition at the end of their fiscal year, and an accounting will be able to be given. The town of Vassalboro wants an accounting as well, and they have a lot more money in the game than we do. So I feel good about where the organization is now, certainly compared to where the organization was. I would recommend that we continue to fund it, and hopefully it'll continue to move in this great direction. If it doesn't, the representatives can come back and talk about it again in a year or two and decide if it's a good move.
You said they were going through an audit right now to try to find out where the money has gone.
Yeah, we haven't hired an auditor, but we are literally going through the books.
Okay, so we don't know how long that's
No,
going to
yeah.
Eric?
Can you just talk very briefly about Jessica McDougal's background and ability, and also, well, do that first.
So the new executive director has an educational background in biology, water quality. She's worked on federal grants. She's worked for nonprofits. She's got some accounting and budgeting background. So she has the expertise to bring to the work and the quality of the work. She's jumped in. She's done Lake Smart training already. She's been very active, and it's a 20-hour-a-week basically
Yeah,
job.
it's not a full-time job.
So, and that's another thing that the CRLA dues pay for, is a 20-hour-a-week executive director, in addition to the Lake Smart coordinator, in addition to the courtesy boat inspector supervisor. So there's a lot of, those things could not happen for $1,500 through WPA. We could not have that infrastructure. So this really pays for the infrastructure of helping that organization.
And just to follow up, is roughly how much does CBI cost? And given that we have quite a few places where we have inspections.
The total CBI, and as John said, Vassalboro has 3 boat launches, is about $35,000 to run CBI. So, and that's 2 days a week, maybe 2.5 days a week at all the boat launches. And again, the infrastructure of having 25 employees, scheduling, paying, all of that,
Transportation.
the
It's
$1,500
very
membership
common.
really does support the infrastructure.
Can I add one more point? I had some interactions with Jessica May and Nick, and I mentioned to her your idea about using volunteers to help with things, and she liked that idea. She loved that idea. She said we shouldn't just call it youth conservation corps, we should call it like a community conservation corps, and that she thought that was wonderful. So I really think she's got the right intentions and everything. She just has a lot to accomplish.
Yeah, and Nick met her, she came to the Lake Smart training.
Oh, that was the one that one?
Yeah,
she
yeah.
was the-
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, and, oh,
Thank you. I know, my pen ran out. Okay.
we have a motion on the floor and a second to approve the $1,500 dues to CRLA. All in favor? Opposed?
Okay, yeah, let's take an opposed. How many people are opposed to that? Okay, motion passed. Thank you.
Could I just
Amy?
dovetail on that a little bit? I know of one property that was just aboard the highest award for Lake Smart, meaning they mitigated
runoff to help minimize contamination. I would like to suggest a competition to find out to try to entice more people on Weber Pond to get Lake Smart certified and what that means. And if anybody is up to the challenge. So how many do we have right now on the lake?
Oh,
We have 2 properties on Weber Pond that qualified for Lake Smart. And one property, the owners don't want it to be publicized, but Becky's property.
and she's my friend, so she.
Which we did a second survey just this spring, summer, and they have redone the qualifications, and it's going to be working out a lot better than the old one. But we did lose 2 of our higher-ups for Lake Smart, so we do have the 2 regional people, but they're starting a new hub, which they promised me that I will be more involved and more informed so that I can get stuff done. Because I did, I think, 7 properties with Erika, and a few of them, they just need small little tweaks, or one property, I believe they should have the award. It's because they didn't get the award because of where their road ends. It needs to be fixed. I don't think it should count against them, but Lake Smart is counting that against them. But I'm working my butt off to try to get that fixed for them.
Jennifer does a great job.
So wouldn't it be fun if Weber Pond had the highest percentage of Lake Smart properties in the area?
Hey, you're volunteering.
So I might mention, one of the things about Lake Smart, for those who are Bassboro residents and have the ability to do so, I would either watch the planning board meetings online or actually attend, because one of the key things that's coming up in all the conversations is how do we control the phosphorus in Weber. It's very exposed. And the other piece is there's actually around code enforcement and particularly with people losing trees and who can take down trees, who can do all these variety of things, is that eventually my hope is they actually incorporate Lake Smart approach in when people are having to try to remove trees, and there's been significant debates. I've been in planning boards where they've gone on for an hour discussing whether somebody can actually take down a tree and replace a ship. So Lake Smart will help alleviate some of that pressure and take the pressure off the planning board too. And also code enforcement, and those of us who are on the appeals board with that, it just make our whole lives easier and easier on the property owner if we incorporate it. So I really encourage us to really start building on Lake Smart as an alternative to punishment, to be blunt about it. So, okay, so I would like to move on and ask Susan, and she's got the data, and Mary's got the gathering. So.
Yeah. Whenever you're ready.
Because it's going to be a while.
Even though you've encouraged, Mary encouraged me to be concise, I'll try. But we know that's not who I am. Anyway, this year, right now, the water quality is pretty much the same as it was at this time last year, in terms of Secchi and things like that, even though we've had some bloom, we've had some scones and things, but they haven't been persistent. Even though water temperatures this year for the whole calendar year are 3.5 degrees above normal. We have about even with rainfall now, but we got 4 inches of rain last week in 5 hours. But the Secchi readings are definitely going down. The most recent one was 2.8. But if I look at Next week, first week of July from last year, it was 2.1. And then we had high phosphorus levels and more persistent scums, and we did a mini flush the first week of July last year. So, early ice out has really made a big difference. The lake was under ice for like 62 days, which normally would be 3 to 4 months. The high temperatures, and then the very high recent temperatures, which were in the 90s and things. If I look at the last week of May, the temperature was 7 degrees above normal. The next week, 6 degrees, and 2 weeks later, 5 degrees above normal. So those very high temperatures encourage the growth of algae, cyanobacteria, and also grasses. We've all noticed that there are a lot of heavy lake grasses, growing in the water. So that causes people concerns, and understandably so. In 2022, we formed a water quality and water level committee in the new bylaw, when we did the new bylaws, and so that they could help make decisions about dam management. They could monitor things better and make decisions. Right now, dam management is our only tool for addressing water quality. There's 11 members on the Water Quality Committee right now. 7 of them are board members and 4 volunteers. Hopefully that'll be, well, I don't know the numbers. But anyway, then we've also explored a lot of people have made suggestions, and we've explored a lot of options for trying to address water quality. And Mary is going to talk about what we found and what we're doing with that. But the committee has spent a lot of time looking at options and consulting with DEP and other experts to try to see what kinds of options we have. We have improved our water level management. In the fall, we documented what the shoreline looked like when we did the fall flush, which we never had any idea. What does it mean when we take out 20 inches, when the water's 20 inches below the spillway? So we did that, we documented that, so we now know exactly around the lake, not every house obviously, but in a dozen or more locations, we documented what it looked like at various water levels below the spillway, which gives us a lot of useful information. We purchased a job box with town funds so that we could store the boards of the dam, because if you've ever carried a 12-inch aluminum board that's 5 feet wide or whatever, 3 to 4 feet wide, it's heavy. Also Nick has loaned his personal engine lift to make it easier to get the boards out, because the old crank thing we had was falling apart. And then Nick brought to our attention ice erosion, which we didn't realize had been a problem. But when I looked back at old pictures from Facebook and posts and things, for at least 6 years we were having ice erosion around the pond from high water levels. And then we also had some issues from spring flooding. So we started saying, hey, I think we need to be more active in monitoring water levels and managing the boards. I'm sorry, Nate, but we didn't have flooding in early April where some people did. Sorry. But because we really, really actively managed the boards to make sure, and I know that you were on vacation and things didn't go the way you wanted them to. Anyway, but the other thing we've done is maintain data, because I'm a data nerd. We maintained a lot of data, so we now know exactly what was going on last year, which we have not known. Nate asked me, how many boards did we have out this time last year? I'm like, I don't really know. So, a year ago, but now we do know those things. We do have accurate information about what adjustments we made to the boards, what the water flow is over the boards, and basically over time, my spreadsheet just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So those are the things we did to manage water levels better. We have also improved our water quality monitoring and our responses to high levels of phosphorus and toxins and cyanotoxins. We got some tests that Jim Webb uses to test the phosphorus levels. which is a test that gives us reactive phosphorus, which number will be lower than the total phosphorus number that we get from the state lab, but it gives us an idea. So that's why the level of phosphorus being 0.3 last year, the estimated level using this new equipment that we purchased with town funds from alewife funds, that is why we said, let's do a mini flush. Because, I mean, the water was green and there were scums, but there was also documented evidence to make that decision. We also purchased toxin tests, and Mary was able to do toxin tests and determine that we had toxins, which we then, this is later in the summer, but we took them to DEP, and they had got the exact same results that we got with our tests that we purchased with town funds. So, again, we did the mini flush in July. We did the normal fall flush a day earlier than we had originally planned. We were planning on doing it sometime over a weekend, and we did it a day before because Hurricane Lee was coming towards us, and we thought it might be a good idea to get some boards out before the dam flooded. Then we increased, we did the normal fall flush, and phosphorus levels were higher than normal, and then when we found the cyanobacteria toxins at the end of September, we removed the rest of the boards. So very high phosphorus levels in mid-November showed us that the fall turnover was going on. It was a level of 10 times the normal level in the fall, so we were able to remove boards and flush more. And we had planned on, we put those back in, but the amazing one is this spring. We had 12 inches of heavy wet snow. The temperature was just around the turnover. The water temperature was just around the turnover level. We had phosphorus levels, and these are the ones that we got back from the state lab, 180 times the normal phosphorus level. DEP, Linda Bacon from DEP, said they had never seen numbers as big as this. It was multiple times. Our biggest number was 3,600. Our highest number before that was 700. I looked through all our data because I've got it on my spreadsheet from 1975. The highest number we had ever had was 700. This was 3,600. So we opened, we already had the boards out because to control water levels because we had had all this heavy wet snow, and we were just flushing phosphorus out. Where this phosphorus comes from? It came from the sediments that we've been talking about, the stuff at the bottom of the lake, which in low oxygen conditions, the iron that binds the phosphorus says, I don't like you anymore, I'm going to go away. And the phosphorus just, I know, I'm silly, the phosphorus just, starts then to come up. And if you have those temperature change that you have at turnover, where warmer water, cooler water is coming down, then it just ends up in the top. And we were able to flush that. So that was pretty exciting. So what we're going to try doing is, we're going to plan on continuing doing is the same stuff to monitor the water levels, monitor the dam, the boards at the dam, try to keep it as close as possible to the spillway. Right now it's 5.5 inches over the spillway, and we're going to take out a board later today. But we're not taking out a bunch of boards because what if the same thing happens this year that happened last year in the beginning of July, which, oh, by the way, is 4th of July week and a very high, probably the biggest usage of the lake all summer long. If scums are being reported, we'll allow the water to come up no higher than 6 inches. We know that causes some shoreline erosion. But it's that weighing the scums and will they turn into toxins versus a little bit of shoreline erosion. We vote as a committee on whether to do mini flushes. And then we try to lower it. We try to lower it so that the water level would be no more than 3 to 6 inches below the spillway, because it impacts recreational use. Fall drawdown is planned pretty much for the same thing. The weekend, two weekends after the Labor Day weekend. That's the 14th to the 16th. The day of implementation will be based on water levels, weather forecasts, and availability of volunteers to manage the boards. So we shouldn't have a big upset when people, if we say, oh, Hurricane Lee's coming, we're going to do it a day or two early. That should not cause any crisis with people. People should be aware that we may need to manage these things. And we try to, one of the things that John implemented was a policy of transparency. And you probably get sick of hearing from me, but that's what I'm trying to implement. That's what we're trying to implement, is transparency with data, transparency with plans, transparencies with our decision-making process. Water levels go up really quickly with rain, but they don't go down so quickly. So that's another thing we need to have expectations about. Unless you're going to pull out a whole bunch of boards, you know, you're not going to even then, sometimes it doesn't go down as quickly as you hoped it would. If we take 3 boards, in past years, before I joined the board, I kept track a little bit of how much quickly the water went down when we pulled boards. And it was about an inch a day. Even if we had 3 boards on each side out, it was only coming down about an inch, maybe an inch and a half a day. So we really have to anticipate things as best we can so that we can plan if we need to take boards out. And then the last thing is that did a poll of people a few years ago to say, at what point, when we tell you, we're the water level is X inches below the spillway, as we do when the flush is going on, when do you start having problems with your boat? And the answers, the people that bothered to answer said about 12 inches. So having the water go down 6 inches below the spillway or something shouldn't cause people a problem, unless there are people who are impacted sooner who didn't answer when I asked the question on Facebook. Any questions? I'll sit down then. You stop.
I might mention, we used to do, we were always so focused on when is drawdown date. And what we really realized that we need a drawdown based on data and actual visual water quality. That was more important. And so and the other piece is, according to the bylaws, the president has his or her call when we do the drawdowns. What I wanted to do was have a committee to look at the data, including rainfall. Nate and I talked a lot about, this is happening, and likewise Susan we'd be watching weather forecasts, we're watching water temperatures, all this kind of stuff. So we'd start pulling down, and we realized that although we can't stop the cyanobacteria, by being proactive, we were actually able to manipulate the dam. Plus, thank you, Nick, because instead of a bunch of 70-year-olds going over there trying to lift the boards out and do that stuff.
70-year-olds, right?
Yeah,
70. You said 7-year-olds.
No, 70-year-olds. Well, we were acting like 7-year-olds. Going over there, we instead, Nick has actually done a remarkable job, and he's young enough that he can do it, and big enough and strong enough to handle it. But even then, sometimes the water pressure is tremendous on those things. So
his willingness to do it, and I meant to mention that in my comments, his willingness to take on this role and do it.
And it's not like, Susan will say, maybe we ought to take down 6 inches or 12 inches. And Nick is over there and does it, and then a couple days later, maybe we better add a board back in. So we were literally doing up and down. But it worked. It worked. And he's smiling about it, which is good. All right, Mary, go ahead.
Which is why when this new dam is rebuilt, and you can take your little electronic thing and control it, it will be a lot easier on
Also,
them.
there will be a board a building built around it too. Matt forgot to mention that.
Who's building it? Are they gonna do it?
Yeah, it's part of the project.
I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
Where it's going to be
Yeah, it'd be like a shed,
Okay.
An attractive.
a tractor, yeah.
So Susan covered a lot of the important background already. I'm Mary Schwanke. As part of the Water Quality Committee, that just was newly formed, we started really looking at what are the big issues. And of course, it's cyanobacteria. That's the big change in the last 4 years. Algal blooms have happened forever, at least while there have been people around Weber Pond. But they are not toxic. They are nuisance. You know, nobody likes the smell or trying to recreate. But these cyanobacteria blooms are dangerous for our health. When the scum forms thick enough, toxins are released. It's not clear when the cyanobacteria decide or why they do, but at some level they start releasing toxins. Not all the species, but some. And unfortunately, we have some of those species. And it becomes an issue for pets, for children, and at some level for adults. And it's a risk for breathing in the aerosolized toxins. It's an issue for skin contact, and certainly if you swallow any of the water. So that's the problem. And as we started looking at, well, what do we do? And it's not just our problem. There are many impaired lakes in Maine, and we're seeing more and more of these cyanobacteria blooms. There's a lot of research happening. It's happening in New Hampshire. It's happening in upstate New York. It's happening in Massachusetts. It's a New England problem where we used to have these colder lakes, and it wasn't, cyanobacteria have always been around, but they weren't blooming to the level they are now. We have climate change, which means we have earlier ice out, we have higher temperatures, we have more severe weather, heavier rainfall. And so that sets the stage for these blooms. They need sunlight, they need warm temperatures, and they need phosphorus. Those are the ideal conditions. And when you have a heavy rainfall, you have, unlike a slow degradation of something alive that adds to phosphorus, this is instantaneous runoff into the surface. And so that sets up the conditions. So we discovered in the process of looking into this that there used to be a plan in place for our watershed, which is Weber, 3 Mile, and 3 Cornered. It's all one system. That expired in 2015. No one was really paying that much attention. We didn't know much about it. But it came to, in discussing things with DEP, we found out that in order to start to get funding for any kind of mitigation, to try to do something about these toxic blooms, we have to have a 10-year plan in place. It's an EPA-approved plan, and we didn't have one. And so we started looking into how do we get there. And it requires quite a lot of water testing, some sediment testing, watershed survey that is walking around and seeing what's coming into the pond. And we've got about 2 to 3 years worth of work to do, at which point we can have a 10-year plan, at which point we can go after big funding to try to take care of how do we treat this problem. So it's a long-term process, it really is, and that can be discouraging, but we've started. And we started by going after some federal funds through the DEP, and thanks to Susan, we put together 2 grant proposals, one in April, one in May, under pretty short time, short time frame, and put these projects together, and we've now got $100,000 to start a project, and that is going to pay for mostly analysis of the water sampling that we're doing. The sampling is all being done by volunteers, but then we send the samples to the lab down in Augusta, and it's not cheap, but we're doing some intensive water sampling. Basically, every 2 weeks, we're collecting a certain amount of data, and once a month, a bigger collection. We're doing this on Weber Pond and 3 Mile Pond. The grant is paying for, the 2 grants together are paying for basically 2 years of intensive water monitoring, a year of sediment monitoring, and 2 watershed surveys. Next spring, we'll be doing the Weber Pond Direct Watershed Survey. And what do we think, fall of 2025, we'll do 3 mile.
3 mile and 3/4.
And 3/4, that'll be included. It's not, 3/4 is not impaired, but because it's in our watershed, we'll be able to include the watershed survey in our funding. So we have a lot of work to do, but we have the funds to pay for this chemical analysis and then the watershed survey. We're trying to get at, number one, the chemistry of the lake with respect to the bottom. And again, we've talked already today. Historically, we have a ton of phosphorus sitting on the bottom. When it's bound to the iron of the sediments, it stays in place. As soon as the dissolved oxygen level gets low and the pH changes, off comes the phosphorus. And then once there's any kind of mixing, it's at the surface, and there comes the
Back in 2002, which is the last time this type of data collection was done, 37% of the phosphorus in Weber came from the sediments. 35% came from our watershed through runoff. Now, there were farms then that aren't there now, so that number might have changed. I think the first number might have gone up. And then the third number, which was 28%, came down Seaward Mill Stream from 3 Mile Pond. So that was kind of the breakdown of where the phosphorus is coming from. And the only thing, well, anyway, I'll stop talking now.
No, finish. Go. So the water testing and chemical analysis and sediment analysis will help. We're able to hire environmental consultants who will help develop the modeling and eventually help us write this 10-year plan, so we can understand really in detail the phosphorus coming off the bottom. The watershed surveys will tell us what's coming off the land. And that's a really important piece because, again, it's been 20 years since anything was done to really know what's happening in our watershed. And because 3/4, 3 Mile, and Weber are all connected, we will be doing that entire watershed. So it's really a watershed-focused approach. And that means it involves Vassalboro, Windsor, Augusta, and China. So there's actually 4 towns that are involved. And Vassalboro has so far contributed a larger amount to this project, but also the town of Windsor just gave us $3,000 for the project for our water testing, and a small grant that CRLA was able to do for us because they are an official not-for-profit. We got another $3,000 from that. So we've been able to get our matching funds that we need for these federal funds.
And the other thing is that the first grant, you're required to match 100% in kind. The second grant is only 25%. That first, so we're using the water testing, which is very labor intensive, as our match. And we say thank you to Mary, but mostly to Jim, who volunteered to do this for both Weber and 3 Mile Pond. Jennifer, who is also trained, and Nick, who is also comfortable with it. So we have people who are going out in boats for hours, a couple times a month, and then going up to, Jim and Mary going up to 3 Mile Pond and doing the same thing.
And I would add, our team here got trained and officially certified for this water monitoring, but also we've got people from 3 Mile Pond. Tom Whitaker, who's the president of the 3 Mile Pond Association, called together his board earlier this spring. Jim and I went over and told them about the project, the grants, and so forth, and there was great enthusiasm for working with us as part of this project. And so we've got a team over there to do the monitoring on 3 Mile along with Jim.
So I'd also like to mention that we have a dedicated boat, thanks to the Spicer fleet. Lindsay Spicer's over here, but we actually have a boat that we've been using to be able to go out on the lake. We've actually put permanent markers, buoys in both ponds, or both in Weber and 3 Mile. So we're taking the samples, and we have some very specialized equipment which we've been trained in to use, that the town helped us purchase for doing this work. So it's a really broad group of people who have been, and equipment required to do this. So there's, I mean, clearly Mary and Jim Webb have been the key piece on the water, but everybody else has been, and Amy too.
So we have 2 years of intensive data gathering. By next spring, Susan and I will be back at the grant writing, and we'll hopefully get a third grant that will pay for the actual modeling and writing of the 10-year plan, because we won't be doing that. We'll be hiring experts to really take all these data and make sense of it, develop the modeling, and then we can have this official 10-year plan, which will allow us to go after state and federal funds.
Also, the town is committed to matching grants, and I might also mention that Nate Gray is also on the town's budget committee. Not that he has any influence. But with him on there, so we've got representation. We work hard to make sure we have broad representation everywhere we can, including now in Windsor and in the town of China. So we had not done that before. This has been a concerted effort going out and working. I also want to, so the Basketball Conservation Commission, which the chair, Holly Weiner, is right back here, is part of this whole thing, group too, and how we influence, how we work together as a community to take care of our water.
We had never asked the town for money, even though the alewife funds, the alewife harvest funds go to the town. And John thought to ask, and that's what paid for our dissolved oxygen monitor, paid for the tests we've talked about, paid for, the toxin tests and the phosphorus estimating equipment and other things too that I can't remember right now.
So I guess the message really is we have to have some patience because we can't do this overnight. It's going to take a while. But what we can do, Susan's already talked about, at least we have a dam and we can do some flushing. And I think that's absolutely critical. And we can try to keep our water levels where they need to be to reduce erosion in the winter and take care of flushing any surface phosphorus when we see it that it's, that we're ready for this bloom condition that no doubt will happen. Each person who's involved with the pond, if you have property on the pond, we've already talked about Lake Smart. Have an assessment done. What can you do on your property? Because when these heavy rains come, we're talking about just what we just saw last week, an awful lot of surface phosphorus instantly showing up in the top of the lake. Camp roads, driveways are the worst culprits. Anytime there's bare soil, bare gravel. But even a lawn and lawn clippings, if you have a steep slope and it's just going to run into the lake, it's a problem. And so thinking about having some deeper rooted natural vegetation along the edge, a buffer zone, is critical to absorbing. If a tree comes down, get more trees back in, because the tree roots, again, are a big part of absorbing that water and also creating canopy. Wherever you can have canopy to reduce the impact of that heavy rainfall, it's critical. So while we love our big open lawns, the big tree comes out and is uprooted. Don't just fill that in with gravel and plant some grass. Create a rain garden. You've got a natural pit that can be built with natural vegetation as a water collection zone. That water will then filter into the ground and not run into the lake. So there are things that we can post on the Facebook and be sending out by email, suggestions, articles, pictures, but it's going to take everybody around the lake to try to take care of that. Roughly 1/3 of our phosphorus is coming from runoff. That part we can try to do something about. The cyanobacteria thing is going to be a slower thing. Down the road, when we do get funding, if we can get this 10-year plan written, we're looking at a possible alum treatment, but that's incredibly expensive. So they just had one done at Togus. In 2018, they did a very successful one in East Pond over in the Belgrade Lakes. This alum takes the phosphorus and basically, essentially seals the bottom to keep that phosphorus from coming off. It can last 10 years, maybe even 20, but it's incredibly expensive. So that's down the line as one possibility, but I keep hoping that as the research increases, that there may be some other things we can do. With a lake our size, oxygenating or mixing is really not feasible.
Plus it puts aerosols in the air if you have
Have a
toxins.
bloom, yeah. Questions?
Actually, can I ask that we, do you mind? Can you hold the questions and then afterwards, because I want to, otherwise, because I'm worried about
Okay.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have a very short piece, and then we can do the questions if you don't mind. So the next piece I'd like to do, we need to approve the board of directors, 2 additional people, the board of directors, and want to have that the nominating committee has recommended that Nick Joes join the board of directors and Lindsay Spicer. Lindsay, you want to stand up? Nick's already stood up, so okay. But yeah, hold it. So do I have a motion to accept this slate for the board of directors? Do I have a second? All in favor? All right, thank you, Lindsay, thank you, Nick. I'm glad you're on. That's a big help. The second thing I need to do is election of officers. So Becky and I have termed out, and we're old. No, I'm old.
Stop here for a second. Back to the board of directors. Charlie Backentos
Oh, yes, I'm
is
sorry.
willing to re-up his term. His term ends this year. John's term, my term, Charlie's term. We staggered the terms of officers. The 3 of us have turned out this year. Charlie is willing to stay on. So in addition to Nick and Lindsay, if we could amend that, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll include
All in
Charlie.
favor?
A lot of people raise their hands.
All right. Good, thank you, Josh.
Thank you, John.
All right, so we also have a slate of officers, because Becky and I have decided that we've served our time, and I did starting back in '97 on and off, so I'm done for now. I've got my hands full at home. So for a slate of officer, Brandon Clark. Brandon, you want to stand up? Say, and Nick Joes is vice president. And Secretary of Tiffany, who is not here today, I'm surprised. And for treasurer is Jennifer. Jennifer has been taking your money anyways. There she is. So do I have any additional nominations for, or we can do this by the slate, which is what our bylaws allow us to do, or we can accept the slate as written? Do we have a motion to that effect? Second? Do we have a second? Come in for a second. Okay, all right. Any questions? All in favor? All right. I'm with no. All right, so then I have a move for adjournment, and then Mary is available to answer question. Amy?
I just wanted to say, for those who are rolling off the board, as well as you guys as officers, I think you've done an incredible job organizing us, getting more than just our community, but getting the surrounding community together. And I wanted to thank you, and I also wanted to thank those who submitted 3 grants and got 3 grants funded. That's how it works.
If we, in the last time when we had done our plan, if we had the knowledge and the ability to go after grants, we could have been doing that then, but we had no idea how to do it. And because we do have the horsepower, and we've asked for help, and we've spent time with all our neighbors, which includes 3 Mile Pond, and actually talked to the Windsor Select Board. It's been, we've really changed the dynamics of it. Granted, the water issue has been in everybody's face, and nobody likes it, and we're trying to do the best we can. So can I have a motion for adjournment? So moved. All in favor? Thank you.